Hello, and welcome to this week's edition of Extra Points, a production brought to you by Delphi Bracketology and StudentUnionSports.com. I'm Daniel Jakes. With me are Jesse Scowden and TJ Nelson. First, let's call on our very own Brian Tonsoni because we know how much he hates to text. Brian, to you.
Thanks, Daniel. Interesting week of college football. What we're seeing is the college football playoff coming into clear picture. Actually, on Tuesday, they announced the first poll. We are videotaping a little bit before that, but the top teams are all winning or hanging on right now. Michigan survives a rivalry game at Michigan State with a nice win. Maybe we should start considering Jabril Peppers for a spot on the Heisman Watch with his defensive play and return game for the Wolverines. Clemson with a huge win over Florida State, come from behind late. If they win out, can't see them not making the playoffs. Washington with a huge win on the road with a late punt return at Utah, their main competition. They're in position to make that playoff. Those are four teams. They add Alabama, who's got a big game this week. That's the four that I think would have been announced. We'll see if we were right. Also, Ohio State hanging on after a loss to tough Northwestern is sitting right there. Texas A&M probably is there. And then Louisville with a touchdown with 13 seconds left on the road against Virginia. Those are the teams that could maybe bounce into the college playoff if a top four team loses. Outside of those seven, I don't know that anyone has enough firepower or strength of schedule to jump in. Maybe Wisconsin or Nebraska in the Big Ten if they would win the Big Ten. So the playoff situation starting to take place. That's what happened last week. We're going to see a lot of teams fighting for bowl eligibility, trying to get to that magical 6 wins to go to the myriad of bowls. A lot of teams want to get there as a reward for their season, and so games between 4-4 and 3-5 teams are going to be of vital importance. Back to you guys in the studio.
Thanks, Brian, for an exciting week in college football. Now let's send it to our own tall and goofy correspondent, Cole Rickles, for our hot and cold segment.
Thanks, children. Cole Rickles here with your hot and cold segment of the week. We're going to start with your hot team. It's Washington. You know, they pulled over the win on Utah, and the Huskies looks like they're obviously going to clinch the Pac-12 North, and overall clinch the Pac-12. I would say. Honestly, they're hotter than Bigfoot and Asana during No Shave November. Back here with your cold segment. We have multiple cold teams this week, and they're all coming from the top 10. You know, West Virginia loses, they fall. Baylor loses, falling again. Clemson almost loses, and Nebraska also taking the L. Honestly, watching these, I was pretty disappointed. There's going to be a lot of different rank changes, and honestly, it was cold like Minnesota.
Cold like Minnesota. Cold like Minnesota. Cold like Minnesota.
Thanks, Cole. Now let's send it to Big Red here for our interesting fact this week.
Thanks, Daniel. Today's interesting fact comes from the unbeatens, where 4 of the 9 top undefeated teams lost. What is even more staggering is 2 of them were on the bye. So technically 4 out of 7 of the last undefeated teams that played lost. The teams that still remain unbeaten are Alabama, Michigan, Clemson, Washington, and Western Michigan. It's going to be interesting to see who remains undefeated and if any of these can get to the polls. Back to you guys.
Thanks, Jesse. Now let's dive into some games this week. For our not-so-primetime games, we have Texas at Texas Tech. Jesse, what are your thoughts on this week's not-so-primetime game?
Well, Jensen was wrong, of course, because I'm always right. But this game is a toss-up, in my opinion. It's going to come down to Texas run game versus Texas Tech's passing game. I'm going to have to give the edge to Patrick Mahomes. With 28 TDs already, he's going to have a huge performance this week.
TJ?
Texas has been a huge hit-or-miss team this year, but I believe their offense will pull away from the Texas Tech defense, and they'll be able to pull this one out of their butts.
I definitely think the Big 12 is nothing short of mediocrity teams. It's going to come down to Patrick Mahomes II, really, if he can air it out this week. Let's go to Vanderbilt at Auburn, TJ, what are your thoughts on this game?
I expect Auburn to continue on their hot streak they have been on the few past weeks. This is a very underrated team this year. They have losses to A&M and Clemson, which are both top 10 teams, but I expect them to get this win.
Jesse?
Vanderbilt's on the high horse. They upset Georgia last week, but that's probably the only positive thing that's going to come out. They have virtually no passing game with Kyle Shamir. He only has 4 TDs with 3 interceptions. I feel like Auburn's going to get the W this week.
I don't disagree with you guys, and Auburn's riding the high horse. They're definitely an underrated team this year in the SEC. Let's see how they do against Alabama this year in the Iron Bowl. All right, let's go to Oregon at USC, some Pac-12 after dark. Jesse, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, Oregon's had a disappointing season. I figured they'd be high in the Pac-12, but don't forget Juju Smith for USC. I feel like he's going to put a Juju on a beat for the Ducks this week.
TJ?
Both of these teams have been extremely disappointing this year. They both came into the season with high hopes, but they both have played pretty mediocre, but I have USC pulling this one out. I have Sam Darnold throwing probably about 4 touchdown passes, 2 of those to Juju.
I don't know that our own correspondent, Jensen Reef, knows that Oregon's had a bad team. He kind of switches it up on us every year, but it's definitely been a disappointing season for the Ducks. I see USC coming out with it. All right, now to our smallest bracketologist, but for the biggest award, Joe Perry for our Heisman Watch.
Thanks, Daniel. For this week's Heisman Watch, at number 5, we have Dalvin Cook. He scored most of Florida State's touchdowns versus a tough Clemson team. He had 4 touchdowns rushed for 169 yards. I think that's enough to get him in the number 5 slot this week, despite his lower season. At 4th slot, we have Donnell Humphrey. He led the rushing attack for Utah State with 223 yards. Jake Browning, quarterback out of Washington. He led his team to victory versus number 17 Utah with 2 touchdown passes this week. Number 2, Deshaun Watson. He had 378 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, and that was versus a ranked Florida State team. He picked them apart like meat off a bone. And then, number 1, not surprisingly, Lamar Jackson. 361 passing yards, 4 touchdowns, and almost 100 rushing yards. We're going to need Usain Bolt in order for someone to beat Lamar Jackson in this race. Back to you guys in the studio.
Thanks, Joe. All right, fellas, let's start with some primetime games. Jesse, you start off with Nebraska at Ohio State.
Yeah, this game, Ohio State has had a rough couple weeks with the upset over Penn State and them almost getting beat by Northwestern by 4 points. It doesn't get any easier for the Cornhuskers coming to town. If they want a chance, they'll have to ride their star, Terrell Newby.
Nebraska has a chance to strike Ohio State while they're down. Like Jesse said, they lost to Penn State 2 weeks ago and looked like a subpar team against a Northwestern team. But I feel JT Barrett gets his rhythm back and starts some leadership with this team. But Nebraska will be a tough challenge.
I'm definitely seeing what you guys are saying. Northwestern, though, I not a lot of people are giving them a lot of credit. They were one of the hottest teams in the Big Ten right now. They only had 1 loss going into last week, and they dismantled IU the week before. But you're right, Ohio State has been playing subpar, and I could definitely see this being an upset in the shoe. All right, let's go to Iowa at Penn State. TJ?
I feel Penn State has way too much momentum for the Hawkeyes. Hawkeyes have played some decent football this year, but Penn State looks like a really good team this year. I feel Penn State pulls this one away by halftime.
I'd have to disagree with him. I think Akron Wadley for Iowa, I smell an upset city here.
I definitely agree with TJ on this one. Penn State's carrying a lot of momentum. They put up 62 last week against a very poor Purdue team, but 62 points in any game, that's a lot of points for a football game. All right, let's send it to our male model here for our tailgate tip this week.
All right, I may not be Jensen Reef, but I'm William Schwindler, Sr. with your tailgate tip of the week. Need a way to get on campus or need a way after a late-night game? Wait, why not call Uber?
Yeah, Uber everywhere, pre-rolls in the VIP. Hey,
Uber everywhere.
Hey, skr.
Thanks for that amazing tip. Now let's get to the reason that we're here today. Let's talk some Alabama at LSU. But first, let's send it to Kyle Klein, our traveling reporter, for this week's traveling reporter.
Thanks a lot, Daniel. He looks a little different this week. Thanks for having me back. I know I've been gone for a little bit, but I've not forgotten about everyone. This week we've got number 1 Alabama heading into Death Valley to take on the number 13 Tigers. This is going to be the first time this will in 10 years. This will not be a Saban versus Miles battle as well. Both teams coming off a bye, so there should be some fresh legs on both sides of the ball. First, we're going to start off with Alabama and QB Jalen Hurts. He's going to be heading into another hostile environment, but little known fact, his QBR is actually better in away games than it is at home. The offensive line is going to have to do a whole lot of work to make sure that Hurts is not hurt by this devastating LSU defense. Alabama is going to be relying on their rushing game once again. They're 11th in the nation at 265 yards a game. This should provide them with pretty solid, taking care of the time of possession and ball-controlled offense. On the other side of the ball, we've got Leonard Fournette. Last year's Heisman hopeful, this year's Heisman hopeful. He's having a quiet but respectable year. He does have 670 yards rushing on 83 carries, good for an 8 yards per carry average. That's amazing. But he's going to be running against the number 4 defense in the nation. So the Alabama's going to be looking to key on Fournette, make LSU pass the ball with their quarterbacks. LSU does have some things going for them right now. They are 3-0 under Coach O. So, once they got rid of Les Miles, who, hey, let's just hope he comes to Purdue because we need some good coaching there. But they're having a pretty solid turnaround right here to save their season. In order for LSU to be able to pass up Alabama this week, they're going to have to run the ball with Fournette. They're going to have to open up the lanes. The offensive line is going to have to do that. And it's going to be a close game, but in the end, I just think that Alabama's offense and their rushing attack and their defense is going to hold back LSU. I'm going to go with Alabama Roll Tide 38-24. Back to you, fellas.
Awesome. Thank you, Kyle. Now let's send it to my freshman JV coach, Dave Gilbert, for this week's Tradition of the Week.
Thanks, guys. This week's Tradition segment takes us to Baton Rouge, Louisiana, home of the LSU Tigers. LSU is one of the most storied programs in college football and one of the most difficult places to play, especially at night. Tiger Stadium, aka Death Valley, becomes a different place when the sun goes down. Since 1960, LSU has a 747 winning percentage in night games at home compared to just a 436 win percentage in day games at home. There have been occasions during night games against big opponents, ranked opponents, that because of the noise of the crowd and how much the stadium is rocking, that is actually registered on the Richter scale at the geology department at LSU. So night games are a huge tradition at LSU. Another tradition you might notice when you watch an LSU game, especially a home game, is that LSU traditionally wears white jerseys at home as opposed to the dark jerseys that most other college football teams use. This tradition started back in 1958 when Coach Paul Dietzel decided to wear white jerseys at home for that season. The Tigers went on to win the national championship that year, and so that tradition of wearing white jerseys continued until 1982. And in 1982, the NCAA passed a rule saying that the home teams had to wear dark jerseys. And so LSU had to wear their purple jerseys from 1983 until 1994. Then in 1995, new coach Jerry DiNardo challenged the NCAA and that rule, and he got them to change it. And they changed it so the home team gets to decide what color jersey to wear. And so that tradition of wearing the white jerseys got to continue. And then in 2000, when new coach Nick Saban took over, he kind of put a little twist on the tradition. And now LSU wears white jerseys for all home games against SEC opponents and wears purple jerseys for home games against non-SEC opponents, except for the first game of the season, which they wear the white jerseys. Another tradition at LSU is that of Mike the Tiger. Not too many schools have a live mascot as one of their mascots, but LSU is one of them. And Mike the Tiger is treated as royalty. The first Mike the Tiger was purchased in 1936 and was named after then athletic trainer Mike Campbell. Today, Mike the Tiger lives in this spacious 15,000 square foot habitat, one of the best tiger habitats in all of North America, just north of the stadium. And then on game days, Mike is put in a cage right outside the visitors' locker room to intimidate the opponents. And then right before kickoff, his cage is wheeled around the field and with the cheerleader sitting on top. And tradition has it that however many times Mike roars that time is how many touchdowns LSU will score. Sadly, Mike the Sixth just passed away this past month after a battle with cancer. When the new search begins for a new Tiger, the campus will wait in anticipation to see smoke blowing from the LSU School of Veteran Medicine. The sign that a new mascot has been located. This mimics the white smoke that blows from the Sistine Chapel when a new pope has been elected. So you can see Mike the Tiger is a very important tradition at LSU.
All right, fellas. We're here. They're watching. Let's get to it. Alabama at LSU. TJ?
Alabama is way too good. Right now it looks like they could beat the Cleveland Browns. Leonard Fournette, great running back, but that defense is nasty, and I feel Alabama has another blowout win here.
Well, this is a fairly new coach for LSU Tigers. Primetime game on LSU. I really hope they can pull the upset, and I feel like they can. It's going to take a miracle from Leonard Fournette, but I just want this Alabama team to lose. So
I can't disagree with I want Alabama to lose, but I don't think there's another team in the nation that's better right now. And as TJ said, they could probably beat the Browns quite handily. All right, let's get to our picks, fellas. Nebraska at Ohio State.
I got Ohio State.
Ohio State.
I'm going to go Ohio State. Watch for the squeaky win by Nebraska, though. Iowa at Penn State. Jesse?
I got Iowa in upset.
Penn State.
Penn State. All right, upset picks.
Like I said, I got Iowa over Penn State. I just have a gut feeling Wadley's going to go off this week.
If there is an upset this week, I feel like it would be Nebraska over Ohio State.
I had Florida at Arkansas. Arkansas has to get a push up front to really have a chance, but I also have an eye on that Washington at Cal game. Cal's offense is very explosive. All right, let's end our Alabama at LSU, fellas. Game of the week, who you got?
I want LSU to win, but I'm afraid Alabama will.
Bama all day.
I have Alabama as well. That's really it for us here today. Thanks for watching. Thanks for tuning in to this week's show. Thank you to DJ Unique, StudentUnionSports.com. Until next time.